Okay, so we are in the Dos Anjos Khabib fight. I'm going to go through a nice little chaining sequence that Khabib does. He actually fakes some takedowns in this, and he fakes some moves, or he gets Dos Anjos to respond to some moves that he's doing, one of the two. But yeah, I'm going to just take you through this. This is quite early on in the fight, so Dos Anjos is very unsweaty, which makes him not very slippy, so this is going to help Khabib in a bit. Anyway, let's get on to where we see what happens. So, Khabib has been using his pressure as usual, and what he does is eventually he throws a huge right hand, and he follows it in. This is like old school Randy Couture style. You know, Randy Couture used to throw that right hand and just follow it straight in to get the double leg. He used to call it a tackle, but this is what Khabib is doing at the moment. The thing I like about this, though, is that we're going to see the intricate details of Khabib's double leg against the cage. Now, I would teach my guys, or I would try and get my guys to get their hands down to the back of this knee to pull this knee out. And then, having watched this, I was kind of wondering why Khabib always does this grip on the hip. And I don't know, but my thoughts are that this is going to stop this underhook, definitely. Alright, this underhook is not going to get underneath the arm if he's got it in at the hip, because Dos Anjos' response to this is to sprawl. So he's going to crimp at the hip, he's going to bend at the hip, which is not going to allow this arm to get underneath this, so Dos Anjos is automatically given an overhook. Alright, so the other thing that I noticed Khabib does is using this hip, is he uses it to drag himself into the hips. If he was on the legs, it wouldn't be quite as useful. It wouldn't be able to pull him in. It'd still, you know, be able to make space. He'd still be able to get his hand in under here. So Khabib is going to drag himself in. He drags himself in nicely. Dos Anjos hasn't made a very good response to this. He's not got his legs back against the cage. He's not got his bum into the cage. He's not got an underhook. He's got his feet together. In reality, if Khabib had got his hands together behind here already, then we would be seeing the end of Dos Anjos, but he hasn't done. He sat nicely. He's just slightly outside the control zone, so he can't really load Dos Anjos up onto his shoulder. Dos Anjos is leaning into the cage. It's going to make that even much harder, and he's put his body weight on top of this shoulder, which means lifting is almost impossible unless you are super, super, super strong. So we'll move a little bit forward, and what we're going to see is Khabib now raise his hips, and he starts to take his hips over to the right side and turn Dos Anjos. Now, the hand is on the hip, and the hand is behind the knee. So initially what he's trying to do is trying to pull this knee, turn the corner with his shoulder, and drop Dos Anjos down here on his backside. So that's really his first attack. This doesn't work. We're going to see Dos Anjos return his hips back to the cage, and we're going to see him lift underneath Khabib's chin. He's also got his underhook thoroughly deep, and he lifts that as well. Now, I think that this is part of Khabib's move to his next technique, because he wants to be lifted up the body. He wants Dos Anjos to sprawl into him slightly, because if he sprawls these hips in slightly, this is going to make this hand move up, this arm move up here much easier. And we see that now as Dos Anjos sprawls his hips in, he actually brings his arm up so that Khabib can get his hands together. Alright, Khabib's not too worried about this underhook at this time. Dos Anjos does a fantastic job getting this underhooking, by the way, because it's a very rare thing, because normally there's no gap between Khabib's head and this arm. So Dos Anjos is doing a great job lifting here, and he does manage to get his underhook in. But the problem for Dos Anjos at this point is that Khabib has got his hands together. So as I said in a couple of the other videos, we have this arm now with the elbow up here. We have the forearm down his back, and we have the palm of his right hand facing towards the cage. We have the palm of his left hand facing into Dos Anjos, and we have this elbow down here. So the torsion is going through here. This is Khabib's hands are in a C grip or an S grip. If you don't know what that is, it's like hooking your hands together, and it's probably the best kind of control in the clinch. So we've got him lifting this elbow, we've got him crimping this elbow. He's already gone for his first move. Now Dos Anjos does very well. He lifts his shoulder up, and he creates enough space here to get his underhook in. So he's lifted that chin and he managed to get that underhook in. And to be honest, that's quite a rarity, because normally this is the position for Khabib's head and arm, okay? And it doesn't really allow a deep underhook or an effective underhook. At this point, Dos Anjos has got an effective underhook. But what Khabib is going to do is he's going to remove the effectiveness of that underhook by giving loads of shoulder pressure through his right shoulder, driving his head in, and slightly turning his hips. Now, what he's doing is he's taking these hips over in this direction. So the pressure is slowly lifting onto his hips. Now, Dos Anjos has probably watched the film with his team, and he knows that what Khabib is really going to do maybe first is he's going to try and reap this leg out here with this leg and just sit him on his bum. So the first initial defense for Dos Anjos is just to kick his leg up in the sky. He's not going to allow Khabib to hook that leg, all right? This is part of the second defense as well. So he's lifted his leg, so there's no reap attachment now for Khabib. Now Khabib will go in for his hip throw. So this is a beautiful piece of technique by Dos Anjos. He must have drilled this, because at the moment, Dos Anjos is in a terrible position for a hip throw. His hips are much higher than Khabib. If Khabib can get his hip in front of Dos Anjos' hip, that boy is going flying. But in this case, what Dos Anjos does is he is feeling where Khabib's hip is and where his thigh is, and what he does is as the leg goes across, he turns his thigh against it. So he stops the possibility of the hip throw at that point. Now, the problem with this is that in Khabib going to put his hip against his hip, what Khabib has managed to do now is he's managed to step his right leg into the control zone right underneath Dos Anjos' body weight. So now he's got a dry grip with this clinch technique, this over-under clinch technique, crimped into his body. He's got all his body weight over this hip. So the throw has failed, the reap has failed. Let's face it, he might not have really gone for the throw, but the throw was available. The reap would have been available if this leg hadn't have been put up. So now what we're going to see is we're just going to see him pull his body in tight, Dos Anjos' body in tight to him, and he's just going to stand up. Okay, so all he's done is he's lifted his right shoulder and he's pulled down on his left elbow. He's loaded these hips onto his own hip. Now his first attack is he's going to put Dos Anjos' foot down over here. So he's going to try and put this leg by swinging him down over here. So this would be the posting point for Dos Anjos to not fall over. What Khabib is hoping to do is remove this leg before it hits the floor. So he's kicking the back of this thigh with the inside of his thigh. He's now lifting this elbow and dropping this shoulder so that he's trying to get Dos Anjos' head to go in this direction and the thigh to go towards us into the picture. So he hits the back of the thigh. Not sadly for Dos Anjos. Dos Anjos gets his foot to the ground before that foot is removed. So there's enough weight on that foot to stop Khabib moving that hip from underneath him. So Khabib now has to react by stamping his foot on the floor and re-lifting. So we can see what he did again was he stamped down the center into the control zone, drove his hips in, and lifted the hips again. Okay? So this is the second time that Dos Anjos is put into the air. Now what Khabib is going to do, he's going to use Dos Anjos' momentum for this next move. So he's actually going to swing him like a pendulum. So he's going to turn towards us. Khabib's going to turn towards us and he's going to swing the hips, or he's going to be faster than the hips of Dos Anjos. So see how he turns. Obviously he's the center of the circle. Dos Anjos' hips are further out from the center of the circle, so these will take longer to go around than Khabib's hips will. So, because he's in the centre of the circle, he'll come around quicker than Dos Anjos' hips. And then what Khabib is going to do, he's going to stop, and he's going to still allow Dos Anjos' hips to swing past the point at which he stops. So he's generated more force into Dos Anjos' hips that have been swung around, and he now stops and he just maintains the swing of the pendulum in that circle. This leg is going to come up behind the back of the thigh, and he's lifting this elbow. Now, this is a beautiful bit of technique from Khabib. Honestly, incredibly beautiful. The balance in this is phenomenal. He's driving with his head. Now, my coaches from the past would be telling me to look in the direction that I'm driving. He seems to be more concerned with driving this leg into the back of the leg, and then he'll turn to look down at the ground to actually put him to the floor. So here we go. So he looks in the direction that he wants Dos Anjos to fall. You see that? And he turns the body as he stops that thigh going to the ground. He's going to keep rotating around and drive forward. Dos Anjos cannot get his hips underneath him or his legs underneath him quick enough to stop that takedown. Goes to the ground, and there we are. We are now into the horror that is Khabib on top. Absolutely beautiful takedown. Nice, lots of little details in there. Did he fake the hip throw? Not sure. Did he fake the reap? Did Dos Anjos know about the reap? Did Dos Anjos know about the hip throw? I'm not sure. But what we can see here is we can see him chaining together techniques again beautifully. And if you're going to be a Khabib standard wrestler, you have to be able to do this. Also notice with the double leg as well, he's controlling the hip on the shot. I didn't really understand that until I watched a lot of footage and then realised that really that's a really good way of stopping someone getting an underhook and stopping someone being able to have anything but an overhook. Yeah, so beautiful technique again from the Beeb. I am a believer, except it's Khabib, not the other guy. Have fun and good luck.